best understand themselves and their thinking in practice and reality. And on the question of reproductive choice, which Paula mentioned, I think that's a very good example of the way in which the movement in this country, and the family still explains why reproductive choice is under attack, why there's still a need to drive to control women's reproductive freedom around the world. The fact that we pushed it back so much in this country and fought to make it a movement that's not just about women's rights, but about that it is a class issue, that reproductive freedom is a class issue, has had a lasting impact on the labor movement in this country, on how people understand it, and about how difficult it will be for the right to bring back any kind of law against abortion. The question of services, though, the question of reality, keeping that movement alive and alert is important. In fact, there is going to be a demonstration in Ottawa next week in defense of the clinic there, which has been under attack. So I think for me, hearing these arguments over time became convincing, but it's only in the practice of actually becoming involved as a revolutionary that you find the ways, the skills to connect these issues in practice. And that brings me to my final sort of concern that I had as someone who is radicalizing. Doesn't the left reproduce the same problems? And don't you have to constantly argue about these things with the people that you're working with and fighting with? Well, yes. I mean, the short answer to that is yes, because we don't somehow, because we have an understanding of this theory, because we want to fight it, we can't magically put ourselves above the structures that shape individuals under capitalism, and that is the bottom line. But there's a process there that if you even look at the way the women's movement has been shaped by struggle, by experience, that it has broadened ideas about women's liberation, what that means. It's really amazing. The histories of how the second wave of feminism became the third wave today, much more integration of the notion of a feminism that is anti-racist, right? And intersectionality is the word it's often given. And that is a development of people on the left in progressive movements working through these things in actual practice. As for women revolutionary Marxist leaders, I really liked what John Riddell said about the Russian Revolution, about the fact that the women leaders that existed are unknown for a reason, and it is because of sexism. It is because women leaders are just not as visible. But when we talk about some of them, who John mentioned Clara Zetkin, who was an amazing fighter against Stalinism, Rosa Luxemburg, who was a major figure, not just talking about women's issues, but advancing Marxist theory on the question of general strikes, on the economy, on social democracy. One of my heroes actually was Sylvia Pankhurst, who's a suffragette, but someone who really advanced the idea of she was sort of around Marxism, but she advanced the notion of class, that you can't just, suffrage is not enough for working class women, and that the way that you fight for women's liberation has to be inclusive of those who don't have the same luxury to put themselves and their bodies on the line and get arrested. So if you look through the history, you will see that women have always played a role in trying to advance a broader left agenda, and we have to fight for their stories to be known. And the fact that it was the International Women's Day March in Russia in February 1917 that really sparked the revolution is important. And this is where I'm going to end it and send it back to Paula, because what happened in Russia is truly tragic. There was such a heroic attempt to try and socialize community kitchens and dining rooms and childcare, and it didn't get far because of the extreme poverty and because of the rise of Stalinism. But I think the lesson there is that Stalinism was about reestablishing capitalism, and capitalism needed a nuclear family, needed women's subservience within it, and that's why it was reestablished. And I just tell you a quick story about the day that the women's strikes were happening in the US and in National Women's Day this year. I was in the dentist office, and sitting next to me was a patient who was really excited about the news about what was going on in International Women's Day, and she was talking to the hygienist, who was Russian. And she said, "Oh yes, it's a holiday where I come from too. It's kind of like Mother's Day, Valentine's Day, give you flowers." And she said, "Well, isn't it better to just, to go on strike to celebrate International Women's Day?" And I found that a really interesting engagement, because it is a tragic thing that all of this history was warped in Russia, and the rediscovery of that radical history of Women's Day is what we're celebrating today.
That's right. So, thank you. So what is women's liberation? It's the struggle for equality, the freedom to choose and determine our own lives, and to shape our own history. Solidarity between women is important because in order to break the narratives of racism, sexual discrimination, and culture of misogyny, women must work together. The capitalist class, determined to keep working class women docile and subservient to produce more workers, is failing. More and more women are breaking barriers, joining together and fighting against these constructs. The more women's liberation is connected to the working class struggle, the more we can achieve emancipation for everyone. The confidence built in various struggles like Fight for 15, fight against pipeline expansion, abortion rights, Black Lives Matter, will strengthen people's ability to bring about a revolution. It will be the mass movements from below that will bring change and solidarity from women from all walks of life.